Okay, so welcome everyone to our seminar today, which is on creating a business plan, making the case for e-learning in higher education. Our speaker is well known to you, is Dr. James Portwood, and he is presently Professor Emeritus from the Management and International Business at Temple University's Fox School of Business and Management. He is also the director of the Temple University Center for European Studies, and since 1990 has been an adjunct professor of management at the Graduate School of Business, Central European University, Budapest, Hungary, and at the Institute of Gestion Sociale, Paris, France. Dr. Portwood is a Fulbright Fellow in Hungary from 90 through 91, and again in 93. He has since led projects promoting economic and social transformation, including development at college-level business curricula in the Central and Eastern Europe, which was funded by the United States Agency for International Development, the Soros Foundation, the Ukrainian Federation of America, and the World Bank. Dr. Portwood has extensive experience in designing and delivering educational programs and has familiarity with a variety of web-based teaching and course management systems. There's much more to say about Dr. Portwood, which I have placed in our week 6 of the seminar. So I invite you to take a deep dive and learn a little bit more about the tremendous contributions Dr. Portwood has made to academia and higher education. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Want to make sure I'm okay. Fine. Well, the one piece of information that is perhaps most relevant to my discussion today is the fact that while I have had experience elsewhere, I have for the last 5 years been an administrator at the Bjaka University Institute in Buea. And so I have some experience directly in sort of Cameroonian higher education. And that's really going to be the basis on which I'm going to talk to you today. It says making, how to create a business plan. Well, I'll tell you something about that. First of all, I see a real connection, a real similarity between leadership and doing business plans and dieting. And the connection is this. There are 1,000 people out there that'll tell you how to do it. And you know what? If you use any one of the things they tell you, it'll work. Okay. The trick is you have to do it. All right. And so I'm not going to go into that particularly. I did send you a reading that said, 12 steps and all that sort of thing. And that's worthwhile. But if you want more information on how to do a business plan, all you have to do is go to Google or type in YouTube and put in developing a business plan, and you'll have more things than you ever want to take a look at. The most important thing for me is, why do you want to do this? And specifically, what are some of the things in the Cameroonian environment that are going to be both opportunities and challenges in this process? Now, I started out with this front page, and I know it's a little hard to read, but one of the things I think it's really important to understand about the whole concept of online learning is it isn't just about running a class for your students. It provides you, once you have the platform for this, all kinds of opportunities, both for your students and more importantly for yourselves. You look over here on these other things, they're talking about not only online teaching, they're talking about online learning, and you can do that for yourself. Okay, it gives you access. It opens up a world of information and examples and all kinds of other things. You could run all kinds of different things off the platform. You can do degree programs, you can do certificate programs, you can conduct research. I see Mabo Michel is here. I think he could probably tell you a great deal about using the internet to support all kinds of different activities, including fundraising and doing research and so forth. And I'll welcome him to step in and talk about how that is an important part of having this e-learning platform built out. So those are just some things that I think increase the value of making the investment, and it will be an investment to put together what you need in order to conduct the online e-learning experience for your students. Now, to me, the real issue here is, let's get the right attitude about what we're doing here in terms of a plan. A plan isn't the end product, it's a beginning product, or it's a beginning spot. And to me, what is really important is that a plan has to be ultimately the intersection between what's desirable and what's possible. The fact is, there are lots of things we might want to do, but the issue is we have to ground that in some reality. And it's the Cameroonian reality that I want us to think about today. So again, we start the business planning process by collecting information, okay? Because otherwise we're just talking about a wish list or a fantasy. So there are two major areas that we have to take a look at. First of all, doing a baseline review. Where's my organization right now? What does it have to work with? How much experience do we have? What resources can we put to this? So you have an idea of where you're starting and what you have to work with. The second thing we have to take a look at is doing a careful environmental scan. We have to look outside the organization and ask ourselves what's going on out there that affects what we need to do and what we can do. Now, there are lots of things, and we're going to talk about that a little later, going on in Cameroon right now, which are sort of driving us toward this at this point in time. Okay. And, you know, I've put a few things up that I think are important, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what other things out there may be driving the move towards e-learning at this particular point in time. Another thing to keep in mind is that because it's a way of getting planning is a way of getting a dialogue started with all the people who may be affected by this, I think we have to see it as an iterative process. In other words, we may put a concept up there, take it out for a test drive, talk to our stakeholders, look at what they have to say, and then come back and make revisions or adjustments based on what we find out in our interactions with people, in doing our various baseline reviews and environmental scans. And then, you know, recognize that something as big as e-learning can actually be a fairly complex process to implement. And so I think the important thing is not to try and look at the whole thing all at once. It's better to take a look and say, okay, what do we have the capacity to achieve right now? And get started, okay? Because the fact is, every time we go through something, we're going to learn more. And I go back up to my point about, you know, getting solid data. One of the most important things is, you know, can we do it? And if you do it and it works, then you can. So start with what you have the capacity to achieve, learn from early actions, and adjust for later stages of design and implementation, and use early successes to build momentum. I think this is a very good thing to think about. I can tell you from personal experience that I was doing things with a computer with my students long before there was an internet. As long as I could put something on there and they could see it, we were in business. Okay, now they had to see it often because I handed them a disk and told them to load it on their own computers. But the idea is you can start with almost anything that is without necessarily having full connectivity and all that kind of stuff. So be creative, think about ways to get your students involved in the process of using computers as a learning tool, or smart technology as a learning tool, and work from there. Once they're comfortable and you're comfortable, you can add things to it. So then we need to go through, and I'm sorry this is a little fuzzy, a set of steps to ask ourselves questions to collect data. Obviously, let's talk about at the top, market research. The question is this something, e-learning, something that's desired in the market itself, or are we going to have to sell it? All right, so the idea is, okay, are people attuned to this? Are they interested in it? And that's not just the people we're going to sell it, because we have to sell it inside the organization as well as outside. So where are our faculty stand on this? And also, what about the people who would be using it as learners? Okay, the next thing is a question of business model. Does it fit with what we're doing? Can we adjust it? In what ways would we have to adjust our current model of learning and education to accommodate e-learning as at least part of what we're doing? And then we want to do a market plan. How do we sell this thing? Okay, both to our faculty and to the administration, Okay, what are the things that are going to get them interested, and also how do we make this issue aware and people aware of it out in the student body, so that they begin to be interested in it. And the question really, to me, one of the most important ones is long-term goals. Does this whole business of e-learning fit into our long-term objective as an institution and also as individuals, or is this just simply a knee-jerk reaction to some short-term issues that we have in front of us? I'm going to argue that this has true long-term goal. We should have long-term goals in which e-learning should be a critical part of what we're doing. Then we have to put a team together because this isn't something one person can do. We may need a development strategy to build expertise and facility with the technology in our faculty and get them to understand, the concept of e-learning, which is in fact different than face-to-face learning. There's certain things that we can't do virtually, but there are things that opens up new doors, things that we couldn't do face-to-face. So that's the issue, is we kind of have to think through what sort of things we want to develop. And then we look at where this field of e-learning is going, because we want to build to the future. And finally, let's get our personal resources together to do it. So there are questions that would be asked all the way around in building this business plan as it relates to putting together an e-learning program. Now, when I said we have to kind of build a case for e-learning or any project that we want to do, the first thing we're going to run into is we've got an idea and other people have to be introduced to it. So the first question they're going to ask is, why are we doing this? Why, why now, and why this particular approach? So we have to be able to answer those questions. And that's part of what a business plan does, is it gives us a structured way of thinking about what we want to do and begins to help us bring together the information that we need in order to answer the questions that our various stakeholders are going to ask us, so that we start talking about strategic objectives. Why is this relevant for this organization and its mission? And that will begin to define the scope of the proposed project, or the stages of the project. As I said, you don't have to start with everything all at once. You can look for ways to utilize online connectivity as a learning platform, and then pick and choose the characters out of that. Think of online learning as a toolbox, and has a lot of possible tools in it. And the question is, which tool do you want to pull out first? Okay, usually something that we're already ready to do, something that the students can easily understand, something that the faculty can easily learn to use. Okay, and then we have to do about looking at strategic opportunities. Is it just about teaching our current students in our current degree programs, or does e-learning open up all kinds of new doors for new products and new clients and so forth, new markets? And the answer is yes, of course it does, because it takes us out of our physical footprint and puts us in the virtual world. Also, I think it's relevant, at least in the beginning, to talk about the question of competitive advantage. I mean, I know we're an academic institution maybe, and faculty aren't used to thinking about competition, but they're out there. And so consequently, we have to ask ourselves, where are we in the curve towards doing something that nobody else is doing? Now, maybe everybody else is doing e-learning and we have to do it simply to meet the competition, or we're going to be able to do something new and different, and it's going to give us a strategic competitive advantage because we're offering a unique product. Nothing of this magnitude ever comes without challenges and risks. We have to go through and do a threat analysis to determine, what are the things that are going to stand in the way. I'm going to talk about this more later, but certainly anybody who's tried to deal with the internet in Cameroon knows that that's an issue. Okay, you have to have reliable, stable connectivity in order to do the most sophisticated kinds of e-learning, because you can't have that keep cutting in and out all the time. And certainly you have to look at who are the players, who are the key stakeholders who are going to have a say in whether this can be done or should be done, and so forth. So you need to do an analysis of the players in the process, and certainly financial considerations, net value added. It's not going to be a zero cost to put this together. but there's opportunity for revenue that might not have been there otherwise. So we do a net value added analysis. And finally, we get to the point of saying, how long, where do we want to start? And over what period of time do we want this project to work? So those are steps of the process, things you should be thinking about going into the planning process. Now, let's move on to, that's what the planning process looks like. Let's go on and start looking at some things that are relevant directly to Cameroon. All right, now, I was saying that I've been working at BUIB, the Biaka University Institute, for several years, and we have done some things in virtual learning. Okay, and so consequently, I've put up a few things here that I thought about and we've thought about in terms of why to do it. Certainly, giving the virtual learning model as an alternative can increase staff flexibility in students. We can talk about learning anytime. World is becoming more complicated and more frantic for a lot of reasons, and giving people a chance to have more control of when they learn and when they do things as far as their personal development is an important characteristic of learning these days. And the e-learning process gives people a chance to do that. Not everybody learns at the same rate. Not everybody can learn at the same time. So consequently, because it's available anytime, or parts of it can be available anytime, people can have more flexibility. Certainly, one of the things that we have, I personally have been working on is gaining more access to information, knowledge, and expertise. We don't have the kinds of vast libraries in Cameroon that you might have in a more developed place. But even in developed countries, the amount of information that's available these days is just horrendous. And we have to have a way to both access it and organize it. And that's one of the things that the computer and online systems are most effective at, is that we can find what we need reasonably quickly. I mentioned at the beginning here that if you wanted to know about how to do a plan, you can get on Google and Google develop a business plan, or get on YouTube and put the same thing in, and you have an entire library of information on that. And virtually any subject that you can think of, you can put information, you can put keywords in, and you'll get information back. It's up to you to learn how to organize it a bit and to evaluate it, but it's there. And certainly, another thing that's become more important is increasing institutional reach. There are opportunities for growth in bringing people in who are either non-traditional students or people who are not geographically close to you. These are things that a virtual operation can do. And again, another thing that we have to think about is campus infrastructure. As an institution grows, they need more buildings, they need more laboratories, they need all kinds of things. What if we could make use of virtual space? What if we could actually take classes out of the classroom and put them into that virtual space? That would increase our capacity reasonably quickly without a significant investment in physical infrastructure. So this is something that we're dealing with right now at BUIB. We have a constrained campus, and yet there's the increasing demand. So use of virtual space helps us out. And then there's the immediately in front of us. Like I said, remember there's the long-term goals versus the immediate reaction issues. And certainly two immediate reaction issues that we've had to think about, and I'm sure all of your institutions have, is the current COVID health crisis and the need for real social distancing and things of this nature. You don't want to be putting a large number of people in a very closed space. By using virtual space, we get around that particular thing. And finally, coping with challenges due to the social unrest in the region. We have to worry about safety for our staff and our students, and we have to recognize limitations to mobility that come with some of the social unrest. And we sidestep that issue if people can stay where they are and learn in place. So those are some things that I have thought about and I've worked with my group to think about. What about any of the rest of you? Are there other, if you will, drivers for you and your institutions that could be added to this list? What do you think? Any other reason that you think your institution would be thinking about as reasons why we ought to do this?
What I think you've covered most of the key reasons on this slide, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
But what about doing it just because it is becoming trendy?
Well, that's what I said. Meeting the competition is one thing, or as we say at BUIB, the audacity to be different, to do something that somebody else isn't doing. Okay. Right. Yes, that is certainly part of the process. Part of what we're looking for is to differentiate our product here. I don't think that whatever that's going to that the trend line is going to keep moving in this direction for a lot of reasons. One thing that I think we have to realize here is that just as a student, being able to get online and find information, and ourselves to get online, find information, organize it, keep our learning going on. These are things that are trends, long-term trends that are going to be necessary. And the use of technology to help to do that is something that is not going to go away. It is a long-term trend that we are moving towards lifelong learning and things of that nature. And technology is what's going to help us do that. And so in the process of getting our students to do this and ourselves, we are in fact building process skills. As we deliver content, we are also teaching students or giving students and ourselves exposure to a system that is going to be absolutely necessary in the future to maintain currency. Okay.
And I think Duran had something to share as well.
Oh,
so Duran, would you please?
Yeah, you need to turn on your
no, he was ready. Go.
Yeah, I wanted to say kind of the same thing, like it's a trend. Like if a school is offering distant learning, people might tend to see the school as kind of up to date, like they're up to date, so it's a trend, like they kind of meet up with the technology. That's it.
That's important.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Just in my own school, I've watched this happen. The number of classrooms that are being taken over by computer labs. You know, I mean, the number of classes that just have face-to-face, even the ones that are face-to-face classes now have all been jiggered to have plugins, you know, or be Wi-Fi or something, because the classroom now is wired. Okay, students come in with smart equipment, whether it's phones or computers or whatever else, and there's an interactive process between the students who are there, the outside world, the faculty who are putting things online. These are all things that are becoming the new model. We need a new culture. We need to come to grips with a new learning culture that's coming online around the world. And the online capability is one of those sort of key things. But I do think we should look at these kinds of things in terms of what's driving it, because what's the most important thing, what's the most immediate thing is going to influence how we roll this out. Okay.
Anjo Madi had something to say.
Okay.
Madi, you had your microphone enabled, so do you have something to point out as well?
Okay, well, there's going to be plenty of this. What do you think? Because from here on, we're going to really be talking about trying to get ready to do this in a Cameroonian environment. And we need to think about what's unique about that particular thing. This is that environmental scanning piece. Now, I'm going to give you a philosophy statement here. And I think philosophy is important. It isn't just about technology. We have to change the way we think. Now, here's a little thing I ran into one time. The Oriental languages, the Japanese, Korean, Chinese, These are pictorial languages. We think of subject, predicate, object kind of thing, but they look at things in terms of pictures, and they have pictograms which relate to things. And when they want a more complex issue, they bring multiple things together. So for example, the word crisis in these languages is wiji in Japanese, and it's the combination of two characters, danger and opportunity. And I think that's very, very deep right there, because we are in crisis around the world, and certainly in Cameroon is no different. We have a number of different crises that are coming at us, and those represent danger. Don't let's say no to that, but it also represents an opportunity. There's a reason right now for doing something that is going to have long-term implications for us. The development of online learning and the capability for connectivity is right now due to those last two things I pointed out: social unrest and medical issues. Okay, but those are short-term issues driving something that I think gives us a chance to do something over the long term. We can take advantage of that opportunity, even as we address the danger that's there for us, and think about it in terms of a long-term thing, not just a solution to a problem. So just think about, if you're trying to sell something to somebody, you need to give them a kind of framework, psychological framework to hang it on. And I think this is a pretty good one. We have danger in front of us in the immediate term, but we have long-term opportunities that responding to this danger should give us. Okay, understand the concept? All right, and we'll move on. Now, the next thing we have to do when we're talking about putting something together is to try and look at our priorities. In other words, we have to think about what are the most important reasons for doing something, even though there are lots of reasons. And I've laid out 4 particular areas of, if you will, advantage that may come out of this. Certainly there are academic advantages if things are properly done, which we could look to. And I'm sure we all want to do the best job we can in terms of delivering on our academic mission and promises. So, you know, we can use this new technology in this new world of e-learning to improve our overall program quality in a lot of different ways. We can bring the outside in, we can bring speakers in, we can bring in information that hasn't been available to us. We can give people demonstrations. All kinds of things are out there for us to use. And we become more, as educators, rather than simply being the only source of information, our job becomes organizing that information in a way that students can access it effectively. Now, that's one of the major changes that comes from moving from an online situation where we control all the information to an online situation where we are guiding students to the pool of information that's out there. Okay. Somebody once said, we go from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And I think that's one of the things that's really a change in teaching methodology and our own mindset about what our role is as teachers. Certainly, we can also expand academic offerings. We can put new courses and new programs together because we can quickly have access to information and expertise that might have been hard to put together before we have this sort of access. Another thing is internationalizing the curriculum. We are a global community these days, wherever we are in the world, and what's happening someplace else does have an immediate impact where we are. And so consequently, bringing that outside in, making people more aware of what's going on beyond their immediate context is very important. And so we can do that because we can reach out easily and do global classrooms or have international speakers or tap into forums at different places. These are all things which you can do once you have access to the internet. And as I pointed out before, develop student process skills in IT, which I think is perhaps the most important thing that we're going to give to students, because what we can learn and what we teach is transformed every minute or so by somebody coming up with a new idea or a new something else. So more important today is people learning how to access information, how to stay current, and the use of IT is critical to that sort of thing. So learning or memorizing things is no longer the way to really improve people's capability, because they keep grabbing the box top and changing the rules. Okay. We've also got the whole idea of shifting business and market realities. If we can't get students to campus, we can't teach them unless we have a way to reach out to them. So meeting the competition or beating the competition to be able to give people more access more easily has so many advantages. And I think that's another reason to start doing this. And obviously, as people's lives become more complicated and time becomes more of an issue, our clients, our students, and perhaps people beyond the people, after people have graduated and so forth, they'd still like to be able to reach back and have us help them maintain currency and so forth. So that opens new markets for credential programs and continuing online learning and so forth that we can provide. So we become a long-term resource for our students, current and future, downstream. So I think that's important. And certainly just the whole idea of new markets and evolving requirements for education and learning are coming at us all the time. And the best way to solve a lot of those problems, to respond, is to be able to have e-learning capacity. There are also, as I said, operational considerations, risk management, new lifestyles, even government policy shifts. We've had some chats with the Ministry of Education, and they are becoming more aware, I think, of both the opportunities and some of the challenges that are inherent in e-learning, but they're interested. And I think we have a chance to shape policy if we can demonstrate that we've got good ideas and the ability to deliver on those things without having to ask Mother, may I? And certainly financial issues. Virtual learning has some cash advantages in that you're not having to build more buildings. You can utilize technology that may be already in the hands of students. You don't necessarily have to provide it. Although, in my school in the US, we actually subsidize people getting computers because, you can't go to school these days without having that, because so much of what we do is done online or requires online access. So those are just some things. So, but where you want to prioritize, what's the most important thing right now for you in Cameroon? Which one of these categories is the hot button, do you think, in your institution? Because this is a question you've got to answer before you even start the planning process, because you want to make sure that your plan reflects the priorities of the people who are going to be having to make decisions about this.
Jim, I would say shifting business and market realities is something that is happening right under our noses. And the limitation here comes from the fact that we do not conduct market research to know exactly what are the expectations of the people out there. Because I can say from my experience that 100% of all graduates from BUIB who have reached out to me about with questions about continuing their education, getting a higher diploma or something, have always asked the question, can I study online?
Changing
Yes.
Evolving requirements for education and learning. Simple as that.
Yeah, so I think that if we do some market research there, we'll find that a vast majority of people are demanding this.
Well, and it opens up so many new markets. I mean, the fact is, any of you who are in healthcare know that there is pressure to not just credential someone and expect them to be current for the next 40 years. The chance, the movement, the evolution of medical care and medical challenges is daily, it's all the time. So these people need access to continuing education. They need both motivation and opportunity. And we can provide both of that to them by maintaining connection and saying, hey, we're still here. We're still here for you. This is still a source of continuing learning for you that we can provide. And you can use that to keep the dialogue open. So that's another, to me, another really critical thing about e-learning systems is that once you've got them, once they're in the system, so to speak, you can continue to connect with them. Okay, you can use it as a conduit for sending out things that they should know about and encouraging them to be interested in continuing education and then being in a position to provide it. Okay, and that obviously that can be a revenue stream as well, you know, because you get nothing for nothing, obviously. But it is sort of an additional revenue stream that doesn't require quite as much, if you will, infrastructure and so forth as you do when you're starting out with you know, a degree program. And it's an easy recruit. They've already been to your place. If they're happy with the education they got there, they're more likely to come back to you than to go anywhere else. So these are all reasons, you know, to think about that stuff. But don't miss the fact that this actually is a way of not only being more convenient, but being better. I believe that online education as a component, not necessarily maybe totally, but as a component, actually improves the overall quality of the program. Okay, because it gives you a chance to do things and bring people in and bring demonstrations in and so forth that you could not possibly do in a face-to-face class. You don't have that access. All right, just look at what we're doing here. All right, this is brand new stuff. I'm sitting here in Philadelphia and talking to you folks in Cameroon. Isn't that amazing? So in any case, I want you to think about these things because I think the priorities that you want to emphasize in talking to your decision makers are important. Now I just put this up here because it kind of gives you an idea what my vision of lifelong learning. Okay. There are lots of different markets that we can tap into. Certainly distance learning means that we can increase our geographic footprint. We no longer have to worry about whether people can get to the class 3 times a week. Certificate programs. The fact is that as things change, people need to develop new capabilities and they need documentation of that. So for example, this program is a certificate program and you will get documentation that you've gone through, if you finish the program, people, a targeted non-degree learning experience, which you can demonstrate to people. That's important. Lifelong learning for graduates, very important. Professional continuing education. It hasn't happened yet in Cameroon, I don't think, Mambo, but certainly in lots of places in the world, you can't maintain your licensure to practice medicine or law or anything else unless you demonstrate that you have engaged in continuing education by attending programs and so forth. And certainly, increasingly, we reach out to non-traditional students, people who maybe have never gone to school and are not able to be full-time students anymore because they're full-time workers, or maybe there's somebody who wants to change a career. One of the hottest degree programs today in healthcare in this country is what's called an ACE program. Cheryl, you want to say something about that?
Sure. The ACE program is an advanced nursing program, and I've forgotten the acronym, Fran. You can probably provide it for me.
It's accelerated credentialing education.
No.
Not
Accelerated
quite.
career
Not quite.
entry.
What was that?
Accelerated career entry.
Well, close.
Okay, so great. So this is an opportunity for individuals who have been graduated with a bachelor's program in some field, doesn't matter really too much what field, are able to go back to school for a second bachelor's degree, this time in nursing, and the period of time in which they're in class is very compressed from the usual 4-year bachelor's degree to a 14-month program that, I think it's even shorter than that, takes advantage of the fact that they've already got a bachelor's degree. So it gives them credit for all of that. And they earn the entry into a whole new profession in healthcare in a much shorter period of time. And this is usually for people who have learned that whatever field that they originally graduated in no longer meets their interests or needs as a working adult, and they're looking for a different field. Fran, you could say something else if you wish, but it's a great example of how people can return to school in specialized programs and get into a whole new area.
That is something that here in the States is really being looked at more focused or with more diligent attention, because we have a decline in our number of high school students. So we're looking at less high school students entering colleges as young college students. So we're looking more at those that might be looking at a career shift. So not just in nursing or healthcare, but in other areas that have potential for growth. So it really does, when you're looking at utilizing learning platforms to take advantage of new markets, is looking at that, where the trends are.
Any of your schools thinking about new programs like this that might reach out to people who are doing this? Let me give you
Abel was going to say something.
What?
I was about to say something, Jim. I was about to say in some other work that we are doing that is unrelated to this, we have an understanding with the World Continuing Education Alliance to provide online education, continuing education for health professionals. So that is now available for free to all health professionals in Cameroon. And one of the interesting things that make me bring that up is the fact that universities and colleges in Cameroon can develop their own courses for continuing education and have them on this platform. So on their terms, the content is going to go through that kind of peer review process. And when it is approved and hosted there, that content is available for people everywhere. So I think that talking about new markets, talking about a wider audience, institutions can do such and have their work and their courses available to people even across the world.
And that really shines a spotlight on what you're doing. And again, that was like, marketing and presenting yourself in a positive light. Mabel, you had something to share? My mistake. Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to give you two pieces of information or two statistics, which you could find on the web, of course. But one is that in the US, at least, or in the developed world, the expectation is that people over the course of their work life will have as many as 4 careers, not 4 jobs, but literally having to change their career focus, hopefully bringing some things with them, but actually having to develop new credentials and new bodies of knowledge that they're familiar with. And that's simply a function of how quickly things change. Just to give you another statistic, 53% of all the jobs that exist in the United States today did not exist 20 years ago. They did not exist, which means that you could not possibly prepare yourself for a whole life, a work career, and expect to continue to be employed in that particular field or career your whole life. So consequently, this idea of people having to re-up, to come back to get something that they need to move on to that next career is something that's very important. And don't think that Cameroon isn't going to be part of this. There's a lot of work right now about the fact that Africa is the next big thing. And part of that is a function of the vast amount of human resources that are there and other kinds of resources, so that you want to bring the work to the place where this stuff all comes together. And so consequently, the need to retool a whole society for a whole new set of opportunities, I think is as important in Cameroon, or maybe even more important than in some other areas. So don't think that's something that's just the developed world. I think it's something that's coming to you. And this may sound crazy, these last two, seniors and mothers, but the fact is we're not all doing career stuff. Our educational system can provide access to information or access to fields that people just have an interest in. And in this country, more and more seniors are going back to school and doing something that they always wanted to do, not because they were going to get a job in it, because it's just something where they wanted to do. Okay, now that may, again, take time to develop. We have a bit more leisure perhaps here than you might find in other places. But the fact is that we have to, remember I talked about long-term trends. These are long-term trends. Mothers that may be handling children right now, but may want to get back in the labor force down the line, may use this moment of working with their children, if they can do it online, to develop, to actually get credentials and learning and so forth that will allow them to re-enter the labor force at a later point in time. So these are all just some opportunities that are out there. And I think we should look at those. And, what do you think about these kinds of things? I mean, I'm offering you some different opportunities out there, and I'd be interested to see whether any of our participants see these things as relevant, or which ones might be relevant soonest in Cameroon. Don't everybody jump in and talk at once. This is the kind of thinking, though. If we're going to be planners, this should generate some kind of thought process in our head here. Okay, because it is that process of thinking about these things that leads us to actions. That's what the planning process is designed to do, is give us a structured opportunity to think new thoughts. Scared you all to death. Okay, anybody? Well, seriously, I mean, this may be a lot of data or information that you haven't really been, thinking about, but I want you to think about it, because I think if we really are going to move forward with this e-learning thing, we have to get in the business of thinking, as we say, outside the box. Okay, where we are now, because the real advantages of e-learning are outside the box.
Jim, this is Cheryl. I was thinking that, my education was as a clinician. And so when I became a manager for the first time, I had to sort of learn the whole language of management and leadership. I had to learn the whole language of business. When I sat down with the accountant for my nursing unit and looked at, my unit's performance against budget, that's a whole new area for me. As a clinician, we're not taught much about the business of healthcare. And I'm just guessing that, other academics, just like clinicians, are not exposed much to business concepts, if you will. And this is maybe represents some new language, new way of thinking that folks are going to have to process a bit.
All the more to use the discussion forum to process this and think about next steps.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important pieces of what we're doing here in this program, because we have to prepare you to actually do this stuff. Not just to understand what it's about, but actually make it happen in your institution. And these are the things that are going to have to be thought about, questions that are going to have to be asked and answered in order for that to happen. And so I just think we need to be looking at that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is stakeholders. The fact is that there are things you can do on your own, and I encourage you to start out right now. Don't wait to ask Mother May I to somebody. Fran always talks about move forward until apprehended. And I think this is the case. You can do things in your own class, within your own classroom. You can use the internet. You can use connectivity to reach out to your students. Make use of whatever you have and make the case for this being something that's relevant and important, and let your students see it and get excited about it. I remember years ago, I teach in at an organization, by the way, friend, it's Institut Gestion Sociale in Paris. And they had asked me to teach a course just because they wanted something in English. 2 years into that, the students came to the faculty and said, look, this must be a required course. It is so important because it gets us access to the internet. It gets us involved in utilizing computers to make decisions. This is critical skills that we know we need. So let's make it a required course. The students can help you out by demanding something that maybe the administration isn't necessarily jumping up ready to do. So use them as, that's what we call co-optation, get them involved in the process and fired up about it. So these are the people you need to pay attention to: strategic institutional decision makers, who's got the handle on the money and curriculum, online instructors and support staff. The fact is, you have to find people who want to teach online. Not everybody finds that an easy thing to do, a comfortable thing to do. So you need to bring together a community of common interest. That's why we're setting up that community of common interest as an adjunct to this very program, because you are the community of common interest now, and you need to stick together. You need to, as a group, need to continue to talk to each other and share information about how you're moving forward in your various programs and how you've been able to get other people interested, because right now you are that community. So please, that is an important thing. Become active in that community of common interest. And certainly current and prospective students, you have to convince them it's a good idea. They have to see it, which means that you need to introduce some of these things into your courses, even your face-to-face courses now, which would give them an opportunity to experience it and begin to get excited about it. And certainly government officials and program accreditors. If there's any question about whether this kind of education is acceptable in degree programs and so forth, we need to answer those questions, okay, so that this can become a part of this. And certainly, I think employers, again, they can be brought into this because they're looking for certain process skills like computers. I teach a course in which there's a business simulation, and I let my students go through a series of projects. I then told the students, when you get through, you've got 6 months. I'm going to leave that open to you. And when you go into an employer and they say, what can you do? You can call it up right there on the computer and show them on your desk. I did this, I did this, I did this. And I tell you, it gets people jobs because they demonstrate a process skill that's over and above book learning. And I think we can do that for our students too. They can show that they've got a capability to utilize the knowledge that they've gained in school by marrying that to an ability to use the internet and use computers to actually do the job that they're being asked to do. And certainly the general public needs to buy into this as well. And what do we need from them? We need approval, resources, participation, acceptance, and trust. Those are things that are elementary to any kind of a change. Okay, we need people to get on board. We need people to be able to invest and willing to get involved. And certainly there has to be a trust that this system is in fact going to happen and is going to be useful. And then obviously, what do they want in return? Well, they want value, return on investment. They want quality. They want faculty are going to want support. It is not, you have to build an entire infrastructure, human infrastructure around this kind of program so that the faculty have people to talk to. If they got an IT problem, if they got a connectivity problem, they need those kind of things. And certainly we've got to reward people who are willing to step up and become part of this process. And we've got to make sure we have standards in order for people to believe there's quality there. And the last thing is, nothing is ever easy. So I suggest, and I think the picture says it all, don't ever give up. So thank you. That's my
Thank you, Jim. I think we won't give up. That's why we are here. We started out quite many of us, and if we still have people hanging on in spite of all the challenges, especially with internet connectivity, we have beaten the odds. I think we are a good reflection of that last image there. We are not giving up. We are not giving up on this. And we are building this critical mass. I remember in the FEMA Institute, they used to say, recognize the fact that to achieve the change movement in every country where they have fellows, they want to have a critical mass of fellows within that country. So our community of practice that we have created here, if we build it up to have that critical mass, it could be a support system for each and every team within the different institutions. And we can pool resources, we can share ideas. And one of the things I have seen is that, as we say, online education removes all the barriers. And we can share really good stuff from different parts of the world. I can bring in people, as Jim said, you can bring the outside in. And in our courses at BUIB, we have enjoyed these global classrooms with Drexel. We have had faculty from different places, from Drexel especially, making input into courses being delivered at BUIB. So we have that, we have seen those advantages. And I think that the challenge is always to put this as part of the mainstream or the medium to long-term strategic plan for the different institutions. I think that would be the biggest challenge, if we can have these institutions at the highest level adopting this deliberately. I mean, coming up with a deliberate plan to incorporate e-learning, then our community of practice is going to be really useful. But I think that even without that, we can find ways to, we can't also say that, well, the school administration doesn't seem to be interested, so this knowledge and skills we have acquired should just be allowed to rot. I think we can also find ways to make ourselves relevant and attractive. And then some other thing I wanted to add is that we have this, the Guild of Private Higher Education Institutions, which is in Anglophone Cameroon. For example, in the Southwest, I was just thinking about the fact that if we have this platform brings together all the private higher institutes. And I think that this community can think about making a case to that platform, because those institutions working together can really cause the government to give the kind of support it should give towards this kind of initiative. They can get to providers of IT hardware. It's easy for you to bring somebody like HP or Dell or whoever through such a platform to provide the kind of resources we need, maybe computers, maybe laptops, maybe tablets, whatever. So I think that we who have gone through this could be the people who start making this, making the case and showing the proprietors and senior managers that this is possible. There are ways around this.
I would throw in one other thing, and that is, once you get to know people a bit, it starts to break down barriers that might otherwise be there on a location-to-location or institution-to-institution basis. I know Mabo will back me up on this. We both have been involved with a group called the Foundation for the Advancement of International Medical Education and Research. And that program is global. It brings people together from lots of different countries, and they get to know each other as individuals. They continue as a community of practice and so forth. They become partners in the process of learning and bringing medical education forward. And interestingly enough, it crosses the lines you wouldn't necessarily think of, different countries that are fighting each other, that have, very unfortunate relationships. The individuals get beyond that, because they're not talking to that country. They're talking to Latha or Ishmael or whatever else. And they do that. And I think that can be something that could happen in Cameroon. There's no reason why this has to be just a Southwest Cameroonian activity. I hope that we can convince the powers that be that maybe we can do some things across Cameroon, okay? Because there's no reason why people have to stereotype and categorize on the basis of where they are or what language they speak or whatever else. So we need to think about how to make this be more than just a solution to an immediate problem of mobility or safety or whatever else, and think of it as a pathway to begin to build relationships and step across those boundaries which have divided us. Because you know what? Standing here talking to you folks, I don't know where you are or what your background is or anything else. And so I'm not going to treat you on the basis of that. We're just a group of people working together towards a common goal, and that's all we have to think about. Anything about the discussions that we've had, the ideas I put up here, because I really do think that there's a huge opportunity here in Cameroon to deal with an awful lot of issues through the development of online connectivity and the offering of online learning, which is, by the way, universal. It has no barriers. It has learning is learning. Okay.
Well, we are at the end of our hour, but I wanted to ask everyone if they would just, those of you who do not have your camera enabled, if you would turn it on, because I'd like to take a group picture since this is the last time we're together. And I do see that Ray has his hand up. So let me quickly take a pic. I'll take a picture, but Ray, you take the mic.
Do I take the question before we take the picture? All right. Dr. Jim, I wanted to ask a question or contribute on the issue of marketability.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the Northwest and the Southwest, or let's say Cameroon generally, but let me start from the Northwest and the Southwest. Just like what Dr. Mabu was talking about, taking courses online, there are a lot of people who are in remote areas and in remote villages where they really want to go to school. And we have some of our courses in private universities, which if we take them online, I've just been exploring the Ed app. I think is very interesting. And I think that with some time, if the app is made available to a wider population, these courses now could be shared to many of them. That's also my own contribution, also thinking about, because that also make the whole platform marketable, and it's also going to contribute to the whole goal of e-learning. Get information or stuff to so many people who may not have time to be regular students. That's just my contribution. Thank you.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's the thing to keep in mind. It's just that ability to reach out is amazing. All as I've taught all over the world at one time or another, but right now for the last year, I've been stuck right here at home, and that hasn't stopped me from teaching. So I'm teaching classes in Asia and in Europe and in Cameroon without ever leaving home. I'd rather be there, but I don't want it to stop. I don't want the learning. I don't want the relationships to stop. So this is a great way to make that sort of thing happen. So please look and think about these. It just opens up a whole set of opportunities. I'm very excited about the capability here. And I know that some people who have taught online have had some strange experiences in having people literally all over the world. The one thing is you have to, the most important thing is figuring out what time it is. You don't want to wake somebody up at 2 a.m. And so you really have to have a picture. If you're going to have this global community that you're working with, somebody's going to be up in the middle of the night. And so you want to be aware of that sort of stuff. But anyway, very interesting. And by the way, Dr. Biaka, you put something on there. Would you like to say something to the group? This is my boss. Madam, are you there? You have to turn your mic on if you want to say something. No, maybe not. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to be hoping that we can continue to work with all of you in this community of interest, because our interest continues. It does not end at the end of the program. And we hope we'll be adding new members as we go along, and you're going to be our founding members. So you're going to be part of the product that we're going to sell to everybody else. And here's a group of people who've benefited from the experience, and we want to have you. We want that experience, that benefit to be shared as broadly as possible. So thank you all for being here today, and appreciate you taking the time. And we'll be talking to you.
And
Maybe
we're gonna
I'll
be
even be in another few months. Maybe I can see you in
maybe,
person.
Cameroon. I will be coming again.
maybe.
Maybe, we hope.
So what we're planning on doing, I'm going to stop the recording.